Let us look at how to deal with the subsurface lithological units. By drilling, we can know what are the rocks at subsurface, we can have the direct evidence. We should note the location, which means the GPS reading, the drill hole number, the plot of drill hole on the map, and the name of the mine must be very clearly be documented. The rock type should be studied in hand specimen and thin section. The depth range of occurrence of that rock is to be studied. The rock samples should be kept in a museum, what we call as a depository. If any scientific data set is kept alongside a research paper, we call it a repository. And in the museum, when we are keeping rocks for future use record, then we use the word depository. More than one drilling might be required. If possible, if financially possible, go for more than one drilling. One of the wells can be designated as the hollow stratotype. The drill well which is giving maximum information clearly about the different rocks or the targeted rock unit can be called as the hollow stratotype, and the other drilling can be called either a parastratotype or a hypostratotype. This is the standard one, and parastratotype or hypostratotype are the supporting ones. What is a hypostratotype, or which is known as a reference section, also known as the auxiliary reference section. This word auxiliary indicates supplementary or supportive. So, therefore, the definition is it is designated to extend the knowledge of the unit of boundary established by a stratotype to other geographic areas or to other phases. A subsurface unit may be named for the borehole. Depending on the name of the borehole, the subsurface unit can be named. Suppose the borehole number is K13, just as an example, then we can call that subsurface unit as K13 formation, F capital. The subsurface unit found by the drilling can also be named based on the oil field. Before naming a formal stratigraphic unit, authors must avoid any existing stratigraphic names. Now, this would be easy. In internet, one can check before I am giving a name for some rock X formation, is the word X already used in stratigraphy. But note that there can also be certain books, old volumes in certain countries which are not digitized, which do not have internet presence. So, in that case, it is recommended to visit library and work thoroughly to check whether the term X has already been used. The International Union of Geological Sciences IUGS is much involved in stratigraphic studies, synthesis, discussions. Revision or redefinition of previously established unit. Suppose a stratigraphic unit X formation has been defined, but then subsequent field work proves that this is not sufficient and correction is required. In this systematic way, the subject of stratigraphy can further. Now, it is done when an error is found and when the paleontological knowledge, our ideas about the fossils keep on upgrading. Suppose I am not sure about the age of the rock, I can write Devonian ? Suppose I am not sure about the stratigraphic unit, whether it is Kamlial formation, I will write Kamlial formation ? So, in a sentence, words after this Devonian ? and before this, or words after Kamlial formation ? or before Kamlial formation, within the sentences we can write very well in this way, and this indicates that the author is not sure about the stratigraphic status. It is possible that in some location what has been called as X formation by author X has also been described as Y formation by author Y. In that case, which name to be used? Suppose a structural geologist is working, not interested to get into the stratigraphy, it will be recommended to write and then continue. or we may choose X formation as per author X, comma, which is same as, so equal to symbol Y formation of author Y, and then continue the sentence. Formation F has to be in capital if it is a formal unit, and the first letter Nagri, in this case from this term Nagri formation comes from the Shivalik stratigraphy, N has to be capital. How to deal with the fossil names? Let us see. Printing of fossil names for stratigraphic units should be guided by the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature and the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. So, regarding the scientific naming, how to name a fossil, one has to look into these literature. And how to write Exus albus, E capital, and Exus is a genus, albus small a, this will not be in capital, and albus is the species. When I am printing, Exus albus should be printed in italics. We can also put an underline in the published version, or one can safely also write it as E full stop and then albus, and it has to be printed in italics. So, how to write Homo sapiens, the scientific name of human beings? Let us understand about the stratotypes. This term has already been used. Let us see. This is the most characteristic or the most typical section to define the stratigraphic unit. What is the meaning of the term unit stratotype? Unit stratotype serves as a standard for the definition and recognition of the stratigraphic unit. Its upper and lower limits are its boundary stratotype. So, that means if this rock body containing rock X is the unit stratotype, its bottom boundary, that means this line is called a boundary stratotype. Boundary stratotype separates the unit X from either you call it a rock or a unit A at the top, and rock or a unit whatever you say for capital B at the bottom. What is a composite stratotype? It is a unit stratotype formed by the combination of several specific type intervals. Consider that the upper and the lower boundaries of a unit are exposed in two places. Consider the lower boundary of A is exposed at location 1, so that the succession is A and M, but how far A goes up we do not know, because I do not see the upper boundary is not exposed, and at location 2 it is A and then T. T how far goes up we do not know. So, from these two locations 1 and 2 we can say that MAT is the conceptualized stratigraphic succession, where we have seen the upper boundary of A at location 2 and we have also seen the lower boundary of location A at lower boundary of A at location 1. So, we can say this particular exposure of rock as a type section for the lower part of A, and another section is a type section for the upper part of A. So, for a stratigraphic unit or even a rock unit A, we can have two type sections, what is called as a section of two components. Now, one of those two types can be called a holostratotype and the other can be a parastratotype, which means out of these two, 1 and 2, one I can call as holostratotype and the other one as the parastratotype. The lower boundary stratotype can be the base of a series. This lower boundary can be the base of a series. The higher rank stratotype consists of several lower rank stratotypes. So, there is a lower rank stratotype 1, lower rank stratotype 2, lower rank stratotype 3, together is known as the higher rank stratotype. Type locality, what is that? It is a specific geographic locality where the stratotype is located. Type area and type region is a geographic territory around the type locality. So, the type locality can be this much and the type area or type region can be that much. This is the type area or type region, and this one is the type locality. So, in stratigraphy, strictly speaking, the difference exists between type locality and type area, although locality and area are almost the same in English dictionary, and type area is same as the type region. So, the term locality in type locality and the region word in type region are different, students have to remember. What is a holostratotype? It is originally described to define the stratigraphic unit or boundary. This is a rock body where we can find a stratigraphic unit, and as I said, it may be possible that at some place only the bottom boundary of a unit A is found, and at another place the top boundary of unit A is found. So, in that case we have to make one of them, consider one of them, either this one or that one, as the holostratotype. You can see that I have drawn intentionally this contact non horizontal, so also over here. What can be the reason? Structural disturbance, tectonic tilting, large scale folding can be a reason. Another thing, when I am making this succession straightway here and succession straightway there, in field it is not so straightforward. We have to look at the way up indicators. This I have covered in the primary sedimentary structure lecture. Use the way of indicators within rock M or within rock A, here within rock A and within rock T, and try to understand, is this the proper Younging direction or is this a Younging direction? If this is a Younging direction, that means the entire rock unit has got overturned. Folding is one such mechanism. So, only after working out with the Younging up direction you come up with this stratigraphic succession, and only after coming up with such succession you combine them to get a composite succession. Back to the holostratotype which I have discussed, and let us go ahead. Note that the term holotype is there in paleontology. It is a typical fossil, and you find out the detail from the paleontological book. This typical fossil is used to define species. The parastratotype, lectostratotype are the examples of supplementary reference section. One reference section is there for standard comparison, but there are supporting or supplementary reference sections. A parastratotype is used to elucidate the holostratotype. To further explain holostratotype, we need another stratotype which is called parastratotype. Lectostratotype or neostratotype is selected later. Since it is selected later, so it is a neo, the latest one, in absence of an adequately designated original stratotype. Suppose the original stratotype or even the holostratotype was defined by someone, and then it was found that it is insufficient for some purpose. Then we introduce neostratotype or lectostratotype to elucidate further. The absence of holostratotype can be due to the destruction of the exposure. Suppose an engineering construction has destroyed an exposure, or suppose the area becomes disputed due to the conflict between two countries at the boundary between the two countries, then it is difficult to approach the holostratotype. Geologists these days are recognizing several places, and they are asking the developers not to destroy those rocks, so that the holostratotype gets well preserved for the future generation for studies. For the chronostratigraphic unit, which will be covered in the chronostratigraphy, but we can discuss here. Suppose two units S2 and S1 are defined, they should not overlap, there should not be any gap. If any gap is there, it is not a perfect chronostratigraph, they are not the perfect chronostratigraphic unit worthy of staying one above other or one bottom of other. There should not also be any overlap. How to deal with the boundaries of the rocks? There are, I have told already, rock boundaries can be sharp A and B, it is easy to designate, but there can be a case where rock A is found, then rock A plus B is found, and then rock B is found. Where should I put the boundary of A? The answer is, here you find out the thickness and make a half of it, and then you say this is unit A and here is unit B. But in some instances the boundary has been chosen arbitrarily. For example, instead of doing this 50% and 50% of the length, one may choose based on some criterion this as the boundaries, and so she calls this as A and this one as the rock B or unit B. The stratotype should be geologically and geographically well documented. Once we say geographically, interested geoscientists should be able to reach the spot, locate the spot regardless of the political or other situations, but this is not going to happen so easily. For example, there are two countries A and B, consider they are neighbors. Persons from A countries, geologists from A cannot visit country B, and country B people cannot visit country A. There are few such countries in the world at present. So, in that case, how to define stratotype? If it is in location country A, B cannot come. If it is in B, A cannot come. So, we may choose a country C if possible, where both A and B can reach. People of countries A and B can reach and define the stratotype. But imagine at B the best exposure is found and not at C, then what to do remains a question. At least the stratotype can be well photographed and that can be published along with the geological data. How do we revise and abandon the formal units? With progress of stratigraphic studies, the stratigraphic succession has to be revised, and it is not the weakness of stratigraphy, but it is an indication that the subject is dynamic. Redefinition is a changing the view or emphasis on the content of the unit. Suppose a unit X has been defined, it can be X formation, but later it is found that X formation is okay, but the basis on which X formation was defined, the basis, the view or the emphasis has to be changed. X formation remains as it is, but the definition of X formation has been changed, that is known as redefinition. So, no change in name happens. The redefinition can be of two types: change in the lithic designation. For example, earlier what was called as X limestone, say some formation has been defined in terms of this way, in this way, say X is a geographic location, but later on field work we find this is not purely limestone, but a part of it has been dolomitized. CaCO3, formula of limestone, in presence of Mg plus 2 in water can alter to CaMg CO3 2. This is the reason is that the size of Mg plus 2 cation and the Ca plus 2 cation are nearly the same. So, in the formula of CaCO3, some Ca plus 2 can go out and Mg plus 2 can enter. So, this is the formula of dolomite or dolostone, which can also be stated in this way: CaCO3 dot MgCO3. Now, in this case it is better to call X limestone as X carbonate. So, this term limestone has been changed into carbonate. So, this is an example of redefinition. Another way of redefinition is that when the original lithic description is inappropriate. Let us take an example. Suppose for some plutonic rock, earlier geologist has studied few sections, hand specimen and thin sections, and has designated it as a gabbro. But later it was found that gabbro is insufficient to describe the complete variation of the rocks. So, in that case the rock name will be knocked out and these terms can come in: intrusion, pluton. For example, Y gabbro will now become Y pluton. Location has not changed, the stratigraphic column has not been altered, only a correction takes place here. So, this is a kind of redefinition. Another example is Z shell is now designated as Z marl. Shell is very fine grained clay sized particle bearing rock, but it was found that for this Z shell a part of it is carbonate. Therefore, the term marl has been introduced. What about revision? It is either minor change in the definition of one or both boundaries or in the rank of a unit. Suppose in this succession X is the unit from stratigraphic unit, but later it was found that the bottom boundary, this one is not correct, we have to change it, either go up or down. Let us say we go down and this is the new one. So, in this case we say that there has been a revision. This kind of boundary change does not happen in case of a redefinition. And if required, the rank is changed. Rank here is X formation. In X formation, rank is formation. It can be elevated to X group. Note that X has not changed. X, the geographic location name possibly, that remains the same, but only a rank change takes place. And as you see in this case, the type section and the type locality remains the same. On the same type section, we are only working or reworking. The pioneering geologist has found lithostratigraphic units A, B and C, but subsequent stratigrapher found B has no separate stratigraphic entity. In that case, B is removed. What happens to this column of rock? A part of it is taken within C and a part of it goes in A. Maybe the geologist decides that this much of B will go within C and this much of B will go within A. So, a revision happens. In this way, B unit has been abandoned. So, what happens to the stratigraphic name? B, let us say B formation, this word will no more be used, this word will be abandoned in subsequent literature, but after giving sufficient scientific reason why it is done so. An example is that from Indian stratigraphy from Rajasthan, Rayalo series was defined by Heron, but then it was found that Rayalo series has no separate entity and then this term has been abandoned in Indian stratigraphy. The word measures has been used in stratigraphy. It is not a formal term. The formal terms are formation, member, bed, and then above formation are the group and supergroup. Measures does not come in this list, therefore, it is an informal term. And it is used in stratigraphy. What is the meaning of measures? It is a sequence of coal beds. Earlier, I have said that the economically important layers can be designated as formation, at least as a unit in stratigraphy. That is what is said. Measures is a term that can be used. In Indian stratigraphy, we find, for example, a term barren measures. Here, measures means it is coal bearing unit, barren means it is devoid of. Now, do not get confused, barren measures does not mean devoid of coal. Measures indicates that it is a coal bearing unit and barren indicates it lacks or is devoid of fossils. The coal measures has been used to represent a series in the Carboniferous system. The term coal measures finds its use in this way. Now, let us look at where the barren measures term comes in Indian stratigraphy. The Indian map is shown, some of the basins are demonstrated. Here, let us look at the Pranita Godavari basin, PG is shown here, and here the Gondwana rocks are exposed. If we look at the stratigraphy of the Gondwana rocks in the Pranita Godavari basin, so many authors have given their stratigraphic successions, and in some of the successions such as by Ramana Murthy, by Datta and by this author, we find barren measures to be present. What is the age of the barren measures rock? It is falling within the late Permian. Okay. Now, we are going to see the use of the terms tongues, lenticles, lentils and lenses. What are they? They are the projecting part of a unit extending beyond the main body. If very idealized diagram, this is the main body and then there is an extension, then this is the tongue and this is the main body of rock. The term tongue, lenticle etc. are usually of independent lithostratigraphic rank, but more commonly they are used for members or for formations. So, either use them independently or treat them equivalent to member or equivalent to formation, not equivalent to group, not equivalent to supergroup, and not equivalent to bed. In a vertical section, if I am watching a rock exposure, suppose here is rock A and here is rock B, then the tongue geometry can be divided into two parts, the upper tongue and the lower tongue. Sometimes when there is a tongue like geometry, we can define a domain A devoid of tongue, a domain B devoid of tongue and a domain C which consists of the tongue, and the boundary is shown by now these two red lines.